a.m. And we are going to dive into how love includes boundaries. We will always pick a topic, something that's coming up for us as we're on our own self-love exodus, our own healing journey. And so, yeah, let's just dive in. So say hi if you're watching the replay, and say hi now if you're watching live now. This is a very, we would like to interact with you if you're here, if you're around. Okay, boundaries gets talked about a lot. We were just discussing that, what's another way to describe boundaries? Because we just talk about boundaries all the time. And sometimes when we talk, we use a word and we're not really honoring our own boundaries. The word loses its value, So I guess when we dive into here, let's describe what a boundary means to us and what does that look like for us when we set a boundary and we use that boundary, we take that boundary, we honor the boundary that we have made for ourselves instead of just talking about it and then just continuing to let our boundaries get crossed over and over and over and over again. So yeah, Hallie, what comes up for you, or what are your thoughts with I guess we'll talk about boundaries first, and then we'll talk about how love includes boundaries.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, a big thing about boundaries to me is that it has to do with our limits, right? It has to do with how much we're willing to give, how much we're willing to share, how much we're willing to connect, until we reach a point where we're like, and that's my edge. That right there is my edge. And so it takes boundaries requires self-awareness.
Oh, yeah. Boundaries
requires having an intentional checking in with self. And it's really with your body, because your body is going to let you know, I feel safe to open. And then right about here, this is where I'm done. This is how far I'm willing to go. And so once we identify that, and usually it often can take repetition. Like Quinn and I were talking this morning, we were scheduling something with a client that we have, and we were trying to figure out where to have this session. And so Saturdays came up, and on Saturdays we do a meditation, and then we have this, and then Quinn and I are doing a lot of deep processing on Saturdays too. And so that's my limit for how much I can do on a Saturday morning. Because we've been experiencing this. And so when Saturday came up as an option, I was like, no, I can't do it on Saturdays, even though I have the time, but my capacity is already used for that period of time. So that's the other thing, right? We might have the time for the thing, but internally we don't have the space for the thing. So it's about having a relationship with your space, with your capacity, so that you can say I'm available technically, but emotionally and spiritually, I'm actually not. The other key thing I think about boundaries is that they only exist when you communicate them. You have to say them out loud. You have to share them. And oftentimes when we're expressing boundary, there's a moment of courage there because we're acknowledging our vulnerability. We're acknowledging our limits. We're acknowledging where we're actually at our edge, which means we're saying, I'm not all able and all doing and have all the space in the world to do everything that everyone wants me to do. Actually, this is where I stop. And that can be scary. It can be scary. But once you start doing that, you'll see that just by voicing it, all people need to know is what your truth is, right? And once they have that information, generally, it's oh, okay, good to know.
Yes.
Got it. And so, it's we can have boundaries, but unless we are expressing them and sharing them with others, they have no idea, So we're really doing ourselves a great service. We're doing everyone in our lives a great service when we acknowledge what our limits are.
Yeah. And it can create so many opportunities for healthy relationships because you're learning to communicate that. That's already vulnerable. And it's such an honest way. And it's for you to really care about yourself, hey, you're showing to that person that you have self-worth and that you know what your boundaries are. And so it's mirroring back to them about, oh, what are my boundaries? You know, they get to communicate that to you. So it is a very long-term benefit to learn what the boundaries are and learn what your capabilities are, which takes, awareness. And how can we gain awareness? It's on the growth path.
Yeah.
Right? You must be on the growth path to expand the awareness, to even be able to have boundaries, to know what your capabilities are, versus experiencing something now and then knowing, those are my capabilities, those are my limitations. And usually when it gets to that point, we're already spiraling down into a very dark area and we feel like we're losing control. Our emotions are all over the place and we're just feeling at that bottom.
Yeah. And one thing you and I were talking about this morning is that the further along you are in having a self relationship, where your relationship with yourself is literally your top priority in life, the deeper you are with that, the quicker you get the signal that like, oh, this is where there needs to be a boundary. Mm-hmm. So that like you don't get so entangled and so in a web with someone or with an organization or your job, or you're so deep in and you're like, holy shit, I should have set a boundary freaking years ago, you know, where it gets really out of control. So it's like you get the signal louder and you get the signal faster. The more that you're just like doing self.
Yes. I think of the word emotional intelligence, like you become your emotional intelligence gets higher and higher as you stay committed to this relationship with self.
Yeah.
Because you'll be proactive. You'll listen, you'll get the hits. You're like, okay. Like for an example, I have a family meeting later on today, and last week was very intense. So, right, like I can even, knowing how heavy something is too, or right when you're about to get into a certain situation where you know that a lot of emotions are going to come up, that gives you the awareness that perhaps do you need to create space for it? Because then my bouncer, I probably will have limitations in that. And then I won't get to act on love. I will act on out of fear, out of anxiety, out of like triggers. And I'm not here to cause more fires, right? That's not what I'm here for. So with that, I know that I need space for it. And two, still knowing what my boundaries are. For an example, if it gets disrespectful at any point, we need to stop.
Yeah.
We need to stop. Doesn't look like you're ready to have this conversation. We can return this at a later time because I'm currently not feeling safe in this, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of revealing how I see my boundaries are. If I do not feel safe, the boundary is being crossed, and I need to leave immediately. I need to go to my safe spaces. So that's kind of like a general gauge. Everywhere I go, if I don't feel safe, do I feel safe? Then I know that that's one of my major boundaries. So it's a mixture of knowing what your capability, your limitations, right? If you have the space for it or not. And two, what is just not allowed in your space. Knowing what's not allowed so that you feel safe. That is huge for me.
Let's talk about some of the reasons why we are afraid to communicate our boundaries. Like, what are the blocks to having boundaries? I think that first of all, the reason why I'm asking this question in the first place is that, like, I know that for me, I learned about boundaries through not having boundaries.
Yes.
That's how we learn this shit, right? Yeah. We violate our own boundaries by not expressing them, and then we get to really painful places, really deeply painful places. And then we're like, okay, this is what I've learned here, is that I needed a boundary way over here, actually. But why didn't I have that boundary way over here? What was the fear? And I think that for me in the past, the fear, I had a really big fear of loss. Like, I was afraid that I would lose someone if I advocated for myself. And you know what? I might have. But if you lose someone by being truthful, then that person isn't aligned with your truth.
Right.
And then it's like it's really better to kind of filter people out with your boundaries than to like, disregard your own self in order to keep the tether,
I feel like that's going to be for freaking over 90% of people. They're afraid of losing somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Especially when we are not fulfilling our needs, and we're already experiencing them giving to us what we so desire and need. We're already attached. So if we're attached and that's our source of love, intimacy, compassion, love, whatever it is, that emotional connection that we all crave, we are desperately afraid of losing that.
Yeah.
So we don't even know we're just, doesn't matter about what our boundaries are. It matters that I'm continuing to get this from you, and that you get to stay in my life because you made me feel this way. And so I need you to stick around.
Well, and often
codependency right there.
Yeah, codependency. Often the thing that we're attached to is a fantasy. It's the fantasy projection of who we think that person is, who we want them to be,
Yes.
Because if it was real, it would just align and there wouldn't be boundary violation in order to maintain the relationship. So our boundaries get us back into reality. They kind of like crack the fantasy, which keeps us in delusion, right? Where we're having a relationship with a make-believe person, and then our boundaries are like, oh, no, if you want to be in relationship with me, then this is what has to align here.
Yeah.
And then you're in a real relationship.
Right. Yeah. So, right. Like, it's like reverse engineer. We've done the opposite where there was no boundary. So like, what would having boundaries look like? And if you want things to change, we need to have boundaries, right? Like, let's apply this and see how it does you a favor long-term.
Yeah. Because
there are people out there who will you get to really see who will honor your boundaries, and people who are really safe. Okay. Can we at least, we're not going to be given the opportunity to see who that really is if we don't have boundaries.
Yeah. Totally.
Right? It's like,
it's so true.
And are you willing to let go of the people who don't really respect you like that?
Yeah.
Like, let's go into that, right? We're so, we look at what we're losing and we want to just grip onto it so tightly. And it's like, but what if what you're holding on to is actually like killing you in the inside? Mm-hmm. Are you willing to let that go for something better?
This is the unraveling codependency process.
Yeah.
It really is.
It goes deeper and deeper,
And we're all doing it, like the whole planet, really. We're all doing it because that's like a paradigm that we kind of all got under the influence of, right? And we're shifting out of that. Like, it's no longer serving us. Mm-hmm. So now we have to understand our limits and communicate them and be honest and open and transparent and loving. So this goes with the topic, right?
Exactly. My
love
thoughts.
includes boundaries, and you don't really get to truly, because boundaries are an expression of self-love, period. And so if you aren't flowing with your own self-love, you're not going to be flowing with your clear boundaries and needs. And then you're not able to really give love, and you're not going to be receiving the love that you need because you're all not being clear on what that looks like.
And that is where it starts, because I think about my journey, I'm sure with your journey too, like the conversation of setting boundaries, the action of setting the boundaries through my actions wouldn't even be possible if it wasn't for my self-love.
Yeah.
Like, we need to matter to ourselves so much that the boundaries, we're willing to set the boundaries, right? It comes. And if you think about it, is your love really true if there's no boundaries? It makes you think about that. If I'm truly loving myself, do I have boundaries? If I don't have boundaries, then have I not loved myself? What is missing in my self-love where there's no boundaries? Right?
So let's talk about, how do we know when we're violating our own boundaries? Like, what are the signs of that? Because we're not consciously doing this.
Right.
It's totally unconscious.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's get into that. Yeah. For me, it's stress.
Mm-hmm. There you go. It's really so simple, right?
It is stress. That means I am saying yes to an environment or yes to a relationship that is crossing my boundary where I don't feel safe, right? Like for an example, it's work related. Let's just say they need more hours from me. So I've done that before. I've done that even with all the jobs, right? And no wonder it caused me stress because I was tired and I did not have enough time and space to attend to my own needs.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore I was stressed. And so now today, being very aware and being very committed to my self-love, when someone's asking more time from me, I'm asking, what am I giving up for that? Will I still have time for my self-love to help my family navigate through some things? Because family is very important to me. Will I have time to work on my business? Is that taking away from that? And see, so those are my boundaries, right? Like if I say I care about these things, if I say yes to working more, then I'm saying I don't care. Like you come later. Work is first. And that's not
It's not your truth.
That is not my truth.
Yeah.
So that is an example of, what was the question again? It was like
violating your own boundaries.
That's how you know you're by your own boundaries. Where's the stress coming from?
Yep.
What are you saying yes to that's causing more stress in your life? What is taking up more space in your life? What is taking up more time in your life where that you can be used for your self-love? It can be used for something that's actually fulfilling, healing, and so good for you. We feel good about yourself. You feel great about yourself.
I love how simple this is, Quinn, right? It's literally that simple. Where is the stress coming from? That's where you're violating your own boundaries. That's it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Boom.
And then once you know that, then it's like, oh, I need a boundary here. What's the boundary? Let me feel into this.
Yes.
And then it's like, once you get clear on what your need is in that situation, okay, now it's time to communicate it. Problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
Identify the stress, identify the boundary that's needed, communicate the boundary. You just freaking healed your life.
Yeah, seriously. I want to bring one example that's coming up really loudly with the communication part. And this is where I'm healing from, not healthy places, healthy relationships I was in, because I am in one now that is way healthier. And sometimes I get my mind from the past. I have it with me. So then I forget that I can actually communicate with this person, and this person will actually listen to me and hear me and honor me. And I still have that story where oh no, they're not going to honor me. So, I have to people please. There was an experience where I had clients all day long and I was out here all day long, and I was finally coming home, and I knew that we had a Zoom coming up later, and the house was empty, so there was space available for me to ask him to come over to me so I can have some more time to myself. Mm-hmm. I can eat, I can just wind down versus having to pack up all my stuff again and go to his place.
Right.
And so I said, hey, why don't you come over here? But I did not communicate the reason why.
Yeah.
I just said, hey, come over here. There's food here. Da, 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 da. And usually he respects the household. He doesn't want to come over to the house often. But there was nobody there, so there was total space for us. But anyways, I was more trying to convince him to come over versus communicating, hey, I had a day. I could really use some extra buffer time. So can you please come over here? That was not communicating, but I thought I was communicating that through just saying, hey, come over.
Trying to lure him in.
Yeah. And just thinking, okay, like a fun game or whatever. Why don't you just come over here? Because you always come over here.
Yeah.
And so I was even more frustrated.
Right.
Because I'm over here packing up, driving over there with full annoyance.
Right.
And then good thing I used my solo practice because I was voice recording. And then I realized that, I wasn't clearly communicating. And when I got over there, I owned it. And he was like, well, what? I would have totally came over there if you had said, hey, had a long day.
This is what I need.
This is what I need.
Yeah.
Okay, I would have came over there. And I even got me more frustrated with myself. You see how we miss the communication. So see, we all have areas where there's next level. There's knowing your boundaries, right? But then acting on it and communicating if it includes someone else. Right? I mean, most of the time it does. It's
so good because in this situation, you were communicating, but you were almost communicating from a people-pleasing place of come over here. There's delights over here for you versus a self place, right?
Yeah.
Of like, can you please come over here? I really need this today.
Which required more vulnerability
Exactly.
and honesty.
Exactly. So this is the other piece, right? Why are we afraid to communicate our boundaries? Because we have to be vulnerable every time that we do. And that's scary, but it has the best payoff.
It does, because you'll get to see if they really like are the person to honor that or not. And if they don't, then okay, not a safe person.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Susan. We see that you're here, getting here. Happy listening, receiving this. Communication is so the key. I'm learning that's my true love language, right? And I love how you point out you communicated, but you didn't really go to where it's clear and vulnerable and honest. Where the person fully understands what's going on in the inside.
Yes.
So they can be helpful.
This is my experience. This is what I need.
Yeah. Man,
Yeah.
that right there.
That's love.
That's love.
That's like skillful love. Like we can have the feeling of love, but when you're like doing love in a skillful way, you're doing that level of communication, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, seriously. And there's always gaps. There's always gaps to be filled, and there's so much opportunities to improve on our communication, right? And that does not happen unless we are aware. We can't be aware unless we're doing the love journey, okay? The self-love journey, the growth journey, the healing journey, the consistent journey, okay? And I mean, that's why we're here. We know it's not easy. Simple practices, simple freaking, a simple way of living, a simple life practice, a simple philosophy. Really hard to do consistently. So that's why we're here.
Yeah.
We are here every week to talk and do meditation at 10 a.m. And then we hop on at 11 here live every single week to support you. And then also with our workshops that we do every single month. So we have one coming out in June. I'm forgetting the title, but it's juicy stuff.
It's Body Compass.
Oh, Body Compass.
Where we get to like really plug into our bodies
Mm-hmm.
to guide us. It goes well with this topic, to guide us to what's correct and incorrect for us.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, if you have any questions, if you're watching the replay, let us know. Let us know. #replay. Let us know you're watching on the replay. But yeah, we appreciate everyone hopping on, and we'll see you next week. Oh, so signing up, Susan. Yes, we will see you. It'll be your third time, huh, Susan? Your third time with us. Yeah, it's freaking impactful because it's 2 hours. We get the time with ourselves, with each other, intimate space to dive in where it is so needed.
There's always epiphanies.
Yeah.
Everyone always be popping off the epiphanies. It's really
and
fun.
what's great is because you're experiencing self-love for yourself, right? There's moments where you're doing it privately with self, and then you get to share with a safe community, and then there's support from others too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we receive feedback or experiences from each other, and someone can share something that's for you, actually.
Totally.
It's for them, but then it's for you too.
Yes.
So it's like it's for everybody.
It's communal healing.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
We love you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
See you next week.
We'll see you next week. Anything else you would like to share before we go?
No,
How
I
love concludes
That
boundaries.
feels really complete for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next week, and join us on our meditation. You can always visit our website, selfloveaccess.com. We have everything. Everything we do is on there. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Cool. Oh yeah. And then
Oh, yeah.
share.
That's
the
a key
last
moment
time I-
right there.
So yeah. Yay, that was a good one.
That was a really good one. On that one.
We have 1.1K viewers.